again is Mike Robbins, successful author, speaker, and author of Focus on the Good Stuff. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Timothy.
Why don't you give our listeners just a little taste of what we talked about over the last 3 weeks, how you were able to pick yourself up and get to here.
Well, you know, my career ended when I was 23 years old, a lot earlier than I thought because I got hurt my third season of professional baseball with the Kansas City Royals. And, you know, I really had a choice. I mean, it was tough. Don't get me wrong. I was devastated when it happened. Because I started playing baseball when I was 7, and there was other things I knew how to do, but that was the main thing.
Yeah.
But after kind of going through my own physical healing as well as some sort of mental, emotional healing, I realized I had a choice. Because I could be one of these guys sitting at the end of a bar every day talking about the glory days, and I could have been, and I should have been, and oh, you should have seen me when I was, 18, all that stuff, right? But I decided, look, there was a lot left in me to do and to say. My life was clearly not over at 23, even though it felt like it at the moment.
Yes.
And I just felt like I had something to share and something to teach. And truthfully, although I didn't talk about it at the time, one of my main dreams about making it, there was the whole personal, sort of selfish part of wanting to be in the major leagues.
Yeah.
But I also thought that if I became a famous baseball player, it was going to give me a platform to speak, to teach, to impact people. And I never had considered at that early age that there was another way to do it. So I'm actually incredibly grateful for what I do now, and as much as I would have loved to continue to play baseball, it's like many things, and many people can probably relate to this. It was a blessing that it happened exactly the way that it did, because I have the life I have now because of it.
Well, I'd have to agree. In his book, he mentions Michael J. Fox and the Parkinson's disease that the actor suffers from. And when asked what his thoughts are on it, Michael says that he is grateful for the disease because it's given him the platform. And perhaps, like you say, a blessing in disguise. Injuring your arm, it's a more powerful story of how you've managed to pick yourself up.
Yeah.
Listeners, I won't try to rehash the previous weeks as we talk about the lessons, but Mike, instead I'd like to jump into Lesson 5, which really caught me by surprise. The lesson, listeners, is appreciate yourself. Very short, very simple. But Mike, I thought maybe that should be the first lesson.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a good point, and in fact, it probably should be the first. It's the most important. I put it at the end, and when I speak, I usually talk about it at the end, because in my experience, Timothy, it's the hardest one for people to confront. So this concept of focusing on the good stuff, being grateful, is a little bit easier. Then we start talking about acknowledging other people. Okay, we can understand that. We start to talk about appreciating ourselves. As important as it is, as foundational as it is, most people have the hardest time with it, because when I say appreciate yourself, even a lot of people listening right now probably hear that as some version of arrogance, or some version of cockiness, or some version of sort of braggadocious boastfulness. It's not that at all. In fact, what I say and what I believe to be true, because we've all in our lives done and said things that are arrogant. I know I catch myself from time to time doing it, and whenever I'm being arrogant, I'm coming from a place of fear. I might be trying to impress you, I'm insecure about something, I'll say, hey, guess what I did? You want to know what's great about me? From a place of, like, please like me. Okay. When I'm coming from a more deep, genuine place, which is what I talk about and Focus on the Good Stuff, of real appreciation for myself, of confidence, of really self-love, that's self-appreciation. And when we're coming from that place, which is the most important thing we can do, I think, in life, because fundamentally, what do we want? People want to make money, they want to fall in love, they want to have success. Why? So they can feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
Well, we really have the choice all the time to feel good about ourselves right now.
Exactly.
We don't have to make $1 million or have the perfect spouse or whatever, the biggest house on the block. I mean, all those things are wonderful. But we've all experienced things, I'm sure you have in your life, I know I have in mine, where we achieved something, thought, oh, that's the thing. And then we got there and thought, well, maybe it's not the thing, because it didn't fill that hole inside of me that only we can fill. And that's where self-appreciation goes.
I have to agree with Mike. Sometimes it is through that adversity that you appreciate yourself. Sometimes it's adversity that strips away all those material things and helps you redefine who you are at a very simple level. You know, it's easy for me to say, I've been in speaking now over 10 years, a group called Toastmasters, and I've achieved their highest award twice. But that's just fact. It's not bragging. And at the same time, if I do nothing with that, well, one might say, well, that's nice. So what does that mean? It's what you do with yourself. That is what I find is really important. Mike, in 7 years, tell us some success stories. How has this been applied? What are the results?
Well, on a personal level, one of the stories from Focus on the Good Stuff, which I know you mentioned to me before we were on the air here, is about a friend of mine named Emily, who I actually was one of the very first people I coached. It was one of the things that really inspired me to get into doing this, because I just was really helping her out as a friend, and she said she wanted to be an opera singer.
Okay.
And she sang opera, but she wanted to be a professional opera singer in Europe. That was her goal. And she had no idea how she was going to do it. It was this big, lofty goal. We started meeting every week just to talk about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, over the course of time, really her focusing on the good stuff, appreciating herself, staying engaged with her goal, she was able to set up a bunch of interviews in Europe. She was able to raise a whole bunch of money, like $10,000 from friends and family. When she first told me, I can't ask for money, I don't do that kind of thing. You know, my German's not good enough, no one will listen. I mean, all these concerns, fears, doubts that her little gremlin, as I like to call it, the little voice was saying. And she went over there, you know, to Europe, got herself a job, and has been a professional opera singer in Europe ever since. Amazing. And yeah, it's really amazing. And those kind of stories from individual personal coaching clients I've had, as well as a lot of the companies that I work with in organizations, I've seen teams transform from conflict to, you know, gossip, sort of this clique, that group, to one where, not that everybody's necessarily best friends, but where they really can communicate openly, they trust each other, they work together, you know, and it's not just a morale building thing, but I've seen sales teams and other groups that I've worked with produce extraordinary results just by simply making the shift for, we're going to communicate this way, we're going to focus on the good stuff a little more, we're going to appreciate each other, as opposed to infighting and being competitive and all the sort of normal things that often groups do.
I have to agree with Mike there. It's easy to gossip, it's easy to talk and chit-chat, but if you focus on the positive, that focus, those positive words and positive thinking, you will start to internalize them and watch as your habits, your actions change. It's not to say that there isn't a room for gossip, but you'll find that pretty soon you don't have time for it.
Yeah.
So a very impressive one. Mike, as we start to conclude our segment and you look back on your 7 years, what would you say to the listeners in the 9 Bay Area counties? What is it you want them to do?
Well, a couple things. I mean, first and foremost, I want people to start appreciating themselves all the time and the people around them. I mean, without being too dramatic about it, it's just imagine that you're never going to see them again. What would you say? What would you do? Like, start relating to life from that perspective in our relationships, because often we wait till it's too late. So that's my real challenge. Specifically, I mean, of course, I want people to buy and read, focus on the good stuff, and share it with as many people as possible. And not just because I want to sell copies of my book, and of course I do, but because I really think this makes a difference, and it's simple but powerful stuff. And the easiest way to do that, it's available all over the place, but if you go to focusonthegoodstuff.com, you can buy it through my website, as well as even download a couple of free chapters to check it out first. But, you know, you can get it on Amazon or any of the bookstores all around town.
Don't bother, listeners, downloading it. Just buy it. You'll download it, you'll read it, and say, now I've wasted 20 minutes reading that. I want to get the book, so just go get the book. You can also go to mike-robbins.com, learn a little bit more about Mike. I was checking out the website, Mike, and I've got to say, you have quite a wide range of services, if I might say.
Yeah.
What specifically is it you do in terms of coaching? How does that work?
Well, primarily, to be honest, these days I've been so busy speaking and traveling and promoting the book and working with my corporate clients, I'm doing a limited amount of coaching these days. I have a team of coaches that I work with that I often refer people to, but when people contact me about coaching on a personal level, usually we just assess where they're at and what they want and try to match them up with the right coach or with me. And it's really about, you know, focusing on the good stuff in your life, in your relationships, and being able to make your goals happen. So if people do go to mike-robbins.com, they can send me an email or just inquire about coaching services, and we can talk about that, as well as anyone listening who works for an organization. If they want to bring me in to speak at a meeting or a conference or come in and consult with their team, that's a lot of what I'm spending a lot of my time on these days.
Well, listeners, I've seen Mike speak. It was at a book signing. He spoke for probably 30 minutes. There was laughter, there was silence, there was seriousness, and there were tears. That's the power of what he's bringing, the message. And sadly, it is not heard enough, but I'm really glad you have brought this message out, Mike. It is one that is sorely needed in our society.
Thank you.
Final question for you. What really matters?
It's a great question. I love the title of your show, and I think, well, what really matters for me, my family, my beautiful wife, Michelle, my daughter, Samantha. I think what really matters is us being real with ourselves and with each other. And, of course, what definitely really matters is gratitude and appreciation for ourselves, for life, and for this amazing gift that we all have.